Hi, everybody. My name is Mike, and I'm an alcoholic. And Mike's sitting there with a big old smile. This is not my idea of fun. And I can tell you right now, when I was a newcomer, I didn't share, and you weren't getting me to the podium. And they kind of trick you. They say you don't turn down an AA commitment or a request. And so I've tried to follow that, and it's slowly gotten to here, you know. And I'm not a person that likes the center of attention. I don't have a can pitch. I can't believe Charles is from Arizona. He loves the center of attention. I can't believe he didn't stand up. He's really a transplant from California, but he's in Arizona. You know, he's, come on, you know, and he loves the center of attention, you know. But I'm not that way. I like the back of the room, you know. I did that in college, you know, and pay attention, and you can still do okay. But most people, the suggestion is to sit in the front. You're going to be able to pay better attention. I'll tell you now, before I start, I'll just say that I just moved here about 3 months ago, and you know, I've gone to a lot more meetings than I have recently, but I can tell you that AA is everywhere. And hearing this, reading the chapter 5 and the 12 steps and the same thing, it's very similar in a lot of places, and it's very comfortable. And as a result, I felt comfortable here. And it's AA, same place, just a different location, you know. So anyway, that's been really nice. And I felt it tonight. Just being here in an AA meeting is a big deal. So to give you what's gone on, you know, I grew up in Oklahoma City, and I can tell you that, I don't know, I was probably 12 or 13 years old. My parents went through a divorce, and I remember going drug week. Drugs are evil, don't do drugs, they're bad, you know. And to be honest with you, I was probably numb inside, and then I tried some outside issues. Really, it was smoking pot, and doing some drinking. But all of a sudden, oh, they lied to us. This is really good, you know. And I liked it, you know. And I remember being that young, your body just doesn't metabolize alcohol very well. And I struggled drinking some of the time. So there was a lot of drug use in the beginning. But then when I got to high school, that's when the drinking really kicked in. And I was really proud at the end of my sophomore year, drinking a 12-pack. You need some help? It's like drinking a 12-pack in one night, and that's a big deal. And we were on our way. And alcohol and drugs were fun. I hung out with some hoodlums. I can tell you I played a lot of sports before the age of like 13. I played everything. As soon as I found alcohol and drugs, it was out the window. And actually what happened was I was a behavioral problem before I started drinking and using. So, but once I started drinking and using, I would just shut down, and they never heard a peep out of me once that happened. And then after that, I didn't get too much trouble at school, but I got trouble other places. So, but, you know, the drinking progressed. Probably by my senior year in high school, I was a full-blown alcoholic, and my mom was done, and she was just done with it. And I graduated high school. I remember we went to dinner right before the graduation high school, and I got 2 suitcases for my graduation present. And my sister's going, hint, hint. And it wasn't, I don't know what I did, but I was gone, you know. It wasn't within 2 weeks of being graduated. I was kicked out of the house. Then I went to my dad's, and I wasn't there very long either, and I got arrested for a DUI and possession of marijuana. And I didn't really get a DUI, though, because back then, if you refused the breathalyzer test, they couldn't hit you with a DUI, and they just suspended your license for 6 months. So I told this cop, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just hammered, and I says, and I'm a skinny kid, I'm 6'4" and 165 pounds. And I told this cop, you know what you can do with that? Do with the breathalyzer, and next thing you know, I'm getting slammed up against a concrete block wall and taken downtown. And my dad picked me up the next morning. I think it was the next morning, and he says, "You pack your stuff, you're out." And so within a month's time, I've been kicked out of both my parents' house, you know. And but that's how I dealt with life, was drinking. That's what it was, you know? And so that summer, I spent roofing houses and drinking, and I lived on the floor of my sister's apartment, and it became the end of August, September, school was coming around, and my mom was having a fit that none of her kids were in school. You know, my sister's supposed to be a senior, I'm supposed to be going to college, and I'd been accepted, and everything was a go, but my dad said after I got to college, this is a noisy meeting, huh? So anyway, mom's having a fit that we're not going to school, we're not going to college, you know, and the parents they met in college, you know, and they were graduate, and they were expected to go. Like, you know, it just wasn't a choice. The choice was what college you're going to go to. And my dad had already told me I wasn't going, but my mom had it in the divorce thing that if the kids were going, he was paying for it. And she had threatened him, if you don't send him to college, I'm going to sue you. And so she comes and gets me and says, you're going to college. And I says, no, he'd already told me I wasn't going. And she goes, you're going, get your stuff, you're going. And she grabbed my sister too, pulled us out of that apartment, and she had to go off to high school. So I go to the University of Oklahoma and didn't do a thing there. You know, it was bad. And I think in 2 semesters, I got 13 units and I had like a 1.0 grade point average. It might've been less than a 1.0. I don't know. You know, it was bad. You know, it was really bad. And drank, got in trouble, got thrown in jail, public drunk, you know, it was just, you know, and I think we'd stolen a keg of beer in the in the dorm and taken it up to our room. And so we were asked to go see the school psychologist for our bad behavior. There was a lot of stuff that happened, and I was done, you know, I was done. So what happened was from there, I didn't have a place to go after that. And I think really you look back on it, they just parked me in a school, you know, and I was out of their hair for about 9 months. So when I got out of there, I went to work for it was union. I went to work as an apprentice to cement mason and made pretty good money, and had on a little apartment. It was cheap. It was like $100 a month. And, you know, the routine was, you know, I wake up hungover, go to work in the mornings, eat something at lunch, start feeling better in the afternoon, and then by the evening come around, have dinner and drink till 2 in the morning, and then get up and do it again. And my alcoholism, I became almost an everyday drinker. And I look back on it, I was young and I was halfway strong, and that's how I was able to do the hard manual labor. But at the end of that deal, I go, I'm not doing this. Well, but more happened than that. I got arrested and put in I was in a jail. Nobody bailed me out, and the combination of that. So what happened was, my drinking was full blown at this time, and I'm 19 years old, maybe 20 years old, and I'm full blown alcoholic. And after I got in trouble with the law, and I was in there for a while, and I got out, my drinking backed off. That's the best way I can describe it. A matter of fact, I got out of there, and I hadn't had a drink for a couple months even after that, I think. I vaguely remember, but so I went off to school again. Part of it was the trouble I got into. Part of it is I didn't want to do manual labor anymore. I says college was a lot easier. It was clean. There were girls, you know, it was much better. So I went back to college and spent 4 years there. And what happened was, you know, so I'm up here, full-blown alcoholic. I back off that line. And so for the next 4 years, I did pretty good, but I started climbing back up that line of alcoholism. That's what really was going on. And so it was the same deal 4 years later. I was almost drinking every day. And if I wasn't drinking, there was drug use in between there. And I remember I says, okay, I'm supposed to be graduating college, and your life's about to take off, right, when you go? And my life was not going like this. It was going like this. And I could see the writing on the wall. I could see it. I go, I'm headed downwards. I'm not headed upwards. And a lot of it had to do with the drinking. So it's okay, I'm going to quit drinking. That's what I did. And, you know, my drinking, it was fun. It was still fun. You know, back then, you know, we had a bar we went into. I knew everybody in there. I'd gone to high school with a bunch of them, and you know, everybody drank alcoholically. You know, go in there, and I can tell you, I didn't know it at the time, but today, looking back on it, they talk about the obsession to drink and the allergy of the body. And I can remember on a Thursday night going into this bar, and I says, I'm just going to have one drink, and I got to go back. I got to go home because I got a big test tomorrow, or something was going on the next day in school. I had 2 drinks. I still remember consciously the effect of the alcohol kicking in, and then I was off and running. And next thing I know, it's 2 a.m. and they're flicking the lights. And you know, obviously, I didn't make it to school, do whatever I needed to do that day. And that's alcoholism. If you're new and you don't understand, it's like once we take that first drink, the effects kick in and boom, we're off and running. And that's what happens to me. Once I drink, I don't know where I'm going to go, what's going to happen till I pass out, and it's on. You know, once I drink, it's on. There's no question about it. And it was wild. It was good about Oklahoma City was a lot like Prescott in the sense that it was wide open. There was a lot of wide open country, so you could get out of town, do whatever, and not get in trouble. And that was a good thing. So anyway, I see the writing on the wall. I can't stop drinking. I try, okay, so I'm gonna quit. That's my thought. And I lasted about 3 days. And then my roommate, who I've known since grade school, and I've drinking all the way up junior high school, all the way up to where I am today, and he comes home with a 12-pack of beer and some buds, and boom, it's on, you know, it's back on. I lasted 3 days. And it becomes pretty obvious that I'm not gonna be able to stop drinking on my own. I just wasn't gonna be able to do it. And so what happened was, I says, okay, I'm gonna have to seek some help here. And they had commercials on TV about these guys in balloons, and they're jumping out of airplanes, and if you have a drinking problem, call this number. And it was called the referral center there. And so I called that number, told her what was going on. And she goes, well, it sounds like you got alcoholism. And in between intervals, you also have drug use to help that alcoholism. And so I says, okay. I said, they says, what we think you should do is come down here and check in. And so, you know, I thought about it, hung up, and I eventually went down there. And I was in that place for a week. And that's where it started. The first thing they told me was, can you stay sober for 24 hours? Can you stay sober for 24 hours at a time? I said, sure, that's easy. And it's a little harder than that. And the other thing that happened in that place was after a couple of days of being in there, I went through with alcoholic withdrawals. And I didn't think I had that big a problem, but what happened was, I had a lot bigger problem than I thought. And, you know, shakes, I wanted to sleep, and I wasn't feeling good. It wasn't, I was pretty healthy because I'd worked hard, but I still had the withdrawals. So I get through there for 7 days, and when I checked out, they're interviewing me to check out, and they says, here's what you do. They go, you should think about doing 90 meetings in 90 days. And then they pointed me to, they didn't call them Milano. I guess, I don't know if they call them Milano clubs here. They do in California. In Oklahoma City, they just called it was called the Western Club. It was a little AA clubhouse. And it was about this size, the size of this room. And then they had a smaller room and they had smaller meetings. And they pointed me that to there, and they said, you should start thinking about going there. And probably the third meeting I went to, it was a speaker meeting. It was pretty big, good size. It's funny too, because back then you smoked. They smoked in the rooms, and the smoke would be so thick that it looked like a smog, and it looked like you could barely see across the room. It was like, you know, and you come out of there smelling like a cigarette. And I smoked back then. That's fun, interesting too, because I'll tell that story. So I went to this meeting, this big meeting, and it was a birthday meeting, and they did it backwards there. They had the long timers go first, some guy got up there with 30+ years, and I'm going, yeah, right. But then they had the last guys that got up there, there was 3 one-year people that got up there and took a birthday. And when I heard them share, something was planted, and I go, I want what they had. I wanted what they had, and that was the beginning of me starting to do this deal. That was the beginning. And so eventually I got a sponsor. That's an interesting story too. So they like to hug around here, and that was different. You know, that was really different. It's like hug. I'm looking at them like, yeah, right. The last physical contact, any physical contact I would have would be, I hate to say this, was a one-night stand. You know, it's like that's what we did. And so this one guy, he was a little too huggy. You know, and it's like, holy cow. And I got to know him. We got to be friends, and he got me a job. I was a driver too, and he got me a job driving a truck at his company to take a load of furniture up from Oklahoma City to Tulsa. And I'll never forget, we had lunch at a thing, and I was really standoffish, and I was really closed off. And so we walked out of this Mexican food restaurant, and I tell this guy, you know what, you and your gay friends need to stay away from me. Right before we get in this truck. So we're in this truck driving, and it's an 1.5-hour drive. And so we're sitting there, and he's telling me a story about all the stuff that had happened to him. And this truck's loud, you know, we're driving and it's loud, and he's practically having to yell it. But after an 1.5 hours of hearing his story and his AA deal and all the stuff that had happened to him, it had touched me, and it changed my perception of him. And eventually he became my sponsor, and we worked the first 5 steps together. And so we worked the steps together, and that was a big deal. And I can tell you, you know, the 2 steps that really stood out was the first step, because he made me make a list of where I was powerless and where I was unmanageable, and I could see where my alcoholism was. Couldn't stop drinking when I took the first drink, and all the chaos and the problems and the relationships that happened as a result. The other one that was the 3rd step, and we did it on Christmas night, and my sobriety date's October 22nd. So I made it all through the holidays not drinking, and I wanted to drink every day. I had the obsession to drink. It hadn't been removed, and I wanted to drink. And we did that 3rd step deal, and I made it through the first of the year, New Year's Eve. Took my first drink on New Year's Eve. And so it was a really big deal to make it through New Year's without drinking, and woke up, I remember January 2nd, and the obsession to drink was gone. And that was a big deal, because I didn't want to drink. And I can tell you, there were times that 60 days, 5 o'clock on a Friday, it was time to drink, and I felt the adrenaline, because I'd been drinking for a long time, and I remember holding on, you know, and that's how it was for me. You know, I wanted to drink, but I wanted to be sober, and I was coming to AA, and I was hanging out with sober people, and that was helping, you know, that was helping a lot. And the reason why, so January 2nd comes around, and that's when I quit smoking. I was just, gosh, now I can, and I was an athlete too, and I was in decent shape, so it wasn't that big a deal to quit smoking, but that's the obsession left, I quit smoking. So that's not pertainable to Alcoholics Anonymous, that's just my story, but that's what happened. So, you know, I did a 4th and 5th step with him. I probably did the 5th step in March, and then I got an opportunity, a job offer in Southern California, Newport Beach, and I was in school too, a couple classes, and as soon as I finished that, I was gone and out to Southern California. So I'll tell this one story. This is my tornado story, living in Oklahoma. So we were drinking. I wanted to see a tornado I lived there 20 years. Wanted to see a tornado the whole time I'm there. Yeah, I'm not joking. We used to be so drunk driving around, and you'd hear the sirens going off. It'd be raining so hard, the water would be over the concrete curb, and it was just, you know, and they were close by, but we never saw them. So the day before I'm leaving to go to California, I was getting my truck ready. And I was living in this old farmhouse, and the guy who was a friend of mine who was instrumental in some of the decisions I made was there. And you hear tornado warnings on the radio all day long and ba-da-da. And, you know, it's probably 2 in the afternoon. And next thing you know, here comes a tornado. First time I ever saw one. And it's coming right at us. And it's coming across, it's kind of coming across a field. And it's getting close enough that where we at, it had a storm cellar. And John Paul was a big, strong guy, big muscles, da-da-da. And I remember we're sitting down in that cellar, and he's crying. I mean, that's how scary it was. He was crying. And for some reason, the tornado was coming, but it turned a little bit, jumped the road, and hit probably 40 or 50 houses, knocked out on the track right across the street. And when we came back out after the tornado was gone, I'll never forget, there was a, I don't know, 6-foot log this big around stuck horizontally right in the side of the farmhouse that we were at. And it was like, holy cow. And that night, the National Guard was called out, all the power was out, and it was like, wow. So the deal, I look at it, it was a God shot that it didn't hit us, because I don't know if I would have made it where I was going if it would have hit the house we were in. And it just, for some reason, it just turned and went that way. And it was like, that's my tornado story. It was the only time I ever saw a tornado. It's like, holy cow. And I can tell you this much, those guys in California that complain about an earthquake, that's nothing compared to what this tornado was. Nothing. You know, it's wow. So anyway, I went out to California, and it was just a little job, and I just went, but it turned out to be really good, because the AA meetings were full of people my age, and we were baby boomers, and we all partied in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, and a lot of us burned out in the mid 80s. We just burned out, we were done. And so it was so cool to go to these meetings, and there was a ton of people my age. Now there was people my age in Oklahoma, but nothing like it was there. And I started going to meetings there. They had a softball, sober softball there. I started playing that. You know, I got back into sports once I got sober and started playing that. And you know, they had Sunday softball, went to that, and started playing tournaments and going to these meetings, and it was just, and made friends, and I've still got friends from that time. I mean, the last 4 years, one of the guys, I've known him over 30 years, and we played golf every week together for the last 4 years. I've known him all that time, so there was a lot of relationships made. Some people went out and drank, but a lot of them stayed sober too, and that was a really good time. Got a sponsor. I had a couple sponsors there, worked the steps with them. God, there's a few things I want to talk about. Some of it sports related. I kind of want to talk about, and this came up this week. You know, like I talked about, I was shut down. You know, I was completely shut down when I started drinking and using. And there's a hole in our soul. And I used alcohol and drugs to fill that up for a long time, but it quit working. That was one of the reasons why I got sober. So then as a result of having that hole, the key is when you come here, we're going to fill it up with a spiritual solution. I don't know if you guys know it or not. If you're new and you haven't figured it out, it is a spiritual deal. And finding a higher power is a big deal. And we're gonna work and working these steps is a spiritual way, going to meetings is a spiritual way. So we fill this up. We fill it up, and it's, you know, it's something to pay attention to. And there was an old timer, just a sponsor, Mike, that talked about this, and he talked about that hole. And AA will do the same thing drinking does. Drinking will do it in a short period of time. AA will do it over a long period of time, but it'll fill you back up. But the key is you know, there's some action that's required to do that. So you have to pay attention. But I kind of lost my train of thought, but it's important. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So what happens is we get here, we get sober, we do the deal, and then stuff starts coming back to us. And then we kind of get away from AA a little bit. We go do this other stuff. and then more stuff comes, and then we get further away. And now we're not filling that hole anymore. And then the next thing you know, you got a choice. You come back to A, or you eventually drink again. And it's really, really important to keep doing this deal and keep coming to meetings and keep staying active and stay here. And I've seen a lot of people go in and out as a result of what I'm describing. And what happens is a lot of people's lives don't really develop if they're going in and out on a regular basis. So the key is to stay here. This program works a lot. What I'm trying to say is this program works a lot better if you stay here and keep doing it on a continuous basis. You know, and I had a friend of mine that had 36 years, and he used to say that. He's right. You know, this thing works a lot better that way. You know, I want to talk about, well, so step 6 and 7, I did inventories, a couple inventories. My first inventory was mom. Okay, mom was in the first, and when there's pages on mom, and so when I got done reading it, that sponsor goes, well, you're definitely an alcoholic. Nobody could have that deep-seated resentments and not be an alcoholic, you know. And then, you know, after I got a couple of years, we went back and I did a couple of 4th and 5th steps, and then I was much more able to look at my stuff, you know, my happenings in the whole works. And it was an eye-opening experience. I'll tell you this, because I was a victim and you guys were just ganging up on me, and, you know, so I can't see. But once okay, the sponsor says, you're not going to look at what those people did. You're going to look at what Mike did. And so we put that down on paper. And once I did that, it all changed, because it was like blinders coming off. And then I saw my part, and then I could see your part, and it was like, oh, geez. And I had a part. I had a big part, you know. And that was a big change. That was a big change, because I could never see my part, and it was your fault. You did it. But so it's just a revelation that I had. And I could tell you, we went through that, and that I'll tell you a story about mom. Mom got into Al-Anon after I got sober, and it was still a struggle with mom for a few years in there. But then she was going to go up. She's going off to the Ukraine to be a missionary. We had made amends. Mom had made amends as Al-Anon. I'd made amends as AA, but it didn't really take. Is the best I could say. It didn't quite work. It just didn't. But mom's going to the Ukraine. Who knows what's going to happen? And it's a third world country. And so I remember we were in a Chili's restaurant in Encinitas, California. And I remember I looked at my mom. I says, Mom, I just want you to know that I forgive you for everything. And she looked at me and goes, really? And I go, yeah. And at that point, that's when the relationship changed. And after that, we were really tight. And, but it was kind of easy because we were very similar. She was more of a Christian, but AA, and so we had parallel spiritual values. She was sports and golf, which I am, and same thing on, she was an entrepreneur like I was, or am, and she's also sports. And so, I mean, we were very similar. So after that, we got along. We had a really good relationship. We probably, I don't know how many years we had. At least 20, maybe 25. I don't know. But she got dementia, and I'll never forget. About 8 years before she had dementia, she hands me this vanilla envelope and says, "You're it." And I go, "What am I?" And she goes, "You're the trustee of my trust." And that was a really big deal, yeah. And I'll tell you something. If I'd known how hard it was going to do that, I wouldn't have done it. But it was like, and what's really been hard is I got 2 siblings, and God, and they're all still drinking. And so I'm like a mirror to them, you know, that reflects their alcoholism. So they won't have any. So it's just been a struggle. That part's been a struggle. But the relationship with mom was just fabulous. You know, it was really good. It was a turning point in my life. You know, I hadn't really even had a girlfriend. I was 7 years sober when I did that. And I hadn't really even had a girlfriend in sobriety. And then that's when the relationships with girls started, after I kind of got stuff cleaned up with mom. So step 6 and 7, I could tell you, these two people right here, I went to a Sunday morning Drop the Rock book where we studied step 6 and 7, and it was fabulous. And learned and studied and read through that book at least 2 or 3 times, maybe more, I don't know. But it was like, it became apparent what my worst character defect was. And it was some of it's anger, some of it's pushing people away. And it was a realization. It was more than just looking at my character defects. It was like looking at all our instincts and physicalities that we have: lust, greed, gluttony. I can't name all of them, but it was a deal, and it was to learn and become self-aware of my character defects. Oh man, that's hard. And they talk about in the book, looking at step 6 and 7 separates the men from the boys. And I didn't ever believe that. I thought it was step 8 and 9 that was the hard one, going up and apologizing for my bad behavior and trying to make amends. But once I saw step 6 and 7, and I really looked at my character defects, they were right when they wrote the big book about that. So, one of my favorite things to talk about is step 11. And I didn't do meditation. I prayed, from the very beginning. And I can tell you prayer-wise, I had this guy, Matt, and he was living in the hotel. I was a bellman in this hotel when I first moved to California. And he was working in the area and staying there, and he was a sober guy, and we got to know each other. And he finally comes up to me one day, and he goes, "Mike, I want to talk to you." And he sits me down, and I don't know how sober I am, 9 months. He goes, "Here's the deal." He goes, "If you want to stay sober, you need to ask this God, this higher power, for help each morning. So you need to get on your knees and ask for help." And I'm looking at him, and I don't know what I said, but I remember thinking, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to hit my knees. So I did half of it. I asked for help to stay sober each day, but I didn't hit my knees. But eventually I did start hitting my knees. And guess what happened? I stayed sober, And it talks about it in the big book. Those guys were desperate. Those guys were freaking, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, they would have done anything to stay sober. There was no Alcoholics Anonymous. They kind of came up with it, and they were willing, and that's what you see. There are some people that are willing when they get here. There's a lot of people that just here because they got to get the heat off, and then they're going to go back out, and they don't really want to do what's suggested. So, but they were willing, and it's like, I think it's important to verbalize that and say, hey, this is how it works. Finding this higher power, which when I did step 3, that's when the session was moved. And that's what's the message, is that this higher power is what's going to remove this obsession to drink. So, like I said, I like talking about the prayer and meditation, continued prayer and meditation. And I hadn't done a lot of meditation, and I'm sober a long time. And I got this new sponsor, and he's taken me through the book and through the steps. And he teaches me how to meditate, but it's very simple. It's very simple what he teaches, and there's a reason why I'm telling you this, because I have the story about this, and I played a lot of sports after I got sober, and this story I'm going to tell probably goes over like I don't even know, an 8-year period, maybe 9-year period. So I'm playing this team play, golf, and I'm watching this guy. We're at his course, and I'm watching this guy, and he's loud and obnoxious, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning. We're teeing off, and I'm not playing in his group. I'm not playing him yet, but watching him, he's got 2 tequila sunrises at 10 o'clock in the morning right next to the tees where he's teeing off. It's like, oh, that guy, he might be one of us. So I see him through the years. We play him once in a while. And then one year I'm playing him. No, I'm not. Well, he's in the group. He's in the other group that we're playing. I'm playing this guy. And Bob, his name's Bob. And I'll never forget, we're playing him and it's a tough match. And this guy's loud and he's running his mouth, which was fine. I understood, you know, because I was like that sometimes, especially drinking. And so I told my partner, it's a close match and we're playing his course, he's home, and you're supposed to hold serve at home. And I tell my partner, I go, watch these guys. If we can keep the match close, they'll implode on the 18th hole. You watch. And sure enough, the match was really close. I think it was tied. I might have been up 1, and we get to the 18th hole. They tee off. The partner hits it in the water. Then Bob hits it in the sand trap. And then he gets to the sand trap, and he hits it out of bounds. I won my whole match with a double bogey. And it's like he's all, and then he starts running, and I played pretty well that day, except for the last hole. And so we get to that group, and we're halfway through. The group's coming in, and they have a drink truck. It's a fancy deal. And I hear Bob going, that Mike, he's such a sandbagger. And that didn't sit well with me. And I looked at it and I said, I shouldn't have said this, but I did. I said, fuck you, Bob. And right in front of everybody. And I said it loud too. And then he quieted down. And then he goes, then I hear off to the side, I go, that Mike, he's such an asshole. So I'm playing Bob the next week on my course. And now I'm playing Bob. And he's got no game except a slip wedge. And we're on the 5th hole. And I'll never forget, I'm ready to let him have it. I've kept my mouth shut. It's been an hour. We've been out here on this golf course, and I'm ready to let him have it. And so at that point, we're waiting for the group to get off the green. So I do the meditation. And I go, just close my eyes, breathe, and says, please reveal yourself to me. And this is what I got. I got, be nice to Bob. That's what I got. Now, let me tell you this. I did not generate that thought. I'm ready to kick his ass, but it's like so I got this message, and I did. I was nice to Bob. I didn't go off on him, didn't do anything. So, Ashley, we had a good match. It was the easiest match I ever played. Closed him out on 14th hole, and it was no big deal. So 2 years later, we're in the playoffs, and we're playing Bob's golf course. And so I'm on the practice green before the match, and I'm practicing my putting. And I could hear Bob coming. I didn't even have to look up. I knew it was him. And he walks by, and I look up, and I go, hey, is that my buddy Bob? And he turned around. He didn't say anything and came up and gave me a big hug. You know, he just, how you doing? It was good to see you. And then we had dinner like a year or two later after that, after one of the matches. So it was like, it was just interesting to watch this whole thing go through. It was really, really, you know, and so paying attention to what's going on, and it talks about it in the promises. We will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. And it comes from doing this over a period of time. And I've told this story at that other meeting, and I don't know. Here's another one. I played a billionaire in President's Cup. And the reason why I tell this, because there's a couple good things that come out of this. But I wasn't intimidated. And the reason why I was intimidated by this guy is because I was sober in AA, and everything was okay. I was on the right path, and so I felt equal. I didn't feel inferior to this guy, and we had a great match. I can't remember if I gave him a stroke or if he gave me a stroke. I know what happened in the match was we got to the 18th hole. I was 1 up, and he got up and down, and I didn't. So we're tied, and we go extra holes. And my first tee shot, we go back to number 1 because we're playing extra holes, and I hit it in the trees. And I don't know where he was. I think he was in the fairway. I don't know. So I remember I'm underneath the tree, and I got to take it up over some palm trees, I don't know, 30, 40 feet high. And I'm standing over this shot, and this is what I hear. I go, loosen up your hands. And another deal, I did not generate that thought. It just came from me. Hit it up over the trees, back into the fairway, hit the green, made par, ended up winning by 1 stroke. And it was just, you will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle you. You know, and golf is baffling, let me tell you. So, oh, jeez. You know, I'm starting to run out of stuff, but I was sitting in a meeting, and it was a big meeting. It was a Saturday night speaker meeting, and there's probably 200 people in this meeting, and I'm taking a birthday, and I think I got 25 years. I'm not sure at the time. But I remember sitting there going, holy cow. It suddenly dawned on me what a big effect AA had on my life. It was a really big deal. I remember going, wow, it hit me, you know? And what I could tell you is that the biggest opportunity in my life was Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I didn't know that when I was new. I didn't know that at 10 or 15 years, but at 25 years, it became apparent that this was the opportunity. And if you're new and you're sitting in this chair, I'm telling you right now, if you'll do this and work the steps and to your best ability, be as honest as you can, your life will take off. It's not going to happen overnight because it builds on itself. It's progressive, year over year, a day at a time, and your life will grow. And that's how it works. It's not going to happen like that, you know. And I remember being a newcomer, complaining to my sponsor at a year and a half sober, how shitty my life was. And he goes, let me tell you this. How long did you dig that hole? And I says, probably 12 years. And he goes, well, you think you're going to fill that hole back up in a year and a half? And I go, no. And he was right. It takes time. This thing, and it's continuous. You got to keep doing it, keep practicing this. But it was, today I can tell you, the biggest opportunity in my life was getting sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. My sobriety date's October 22nd, 1985. I just celebrated 35 years, and I'm still going to meetings, still doing it. Thanks for letting me share.